Shalom. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakah Kodash, double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, and salutations to all you brothers out there pushing this truth in all sincerity and faith and honesty. I'm that fellow servant Kanakala from GMS St. Petersburg, Florida. Alright, and this is a good article here posted 14 hours ago. Alright, it says 4 powerful weapons in China, CNBC. Alright, it says 4 powerful weapons in China has in its arsenal to win a U.S.-China trade war. It says last week the U.S. launched a trade war with China, revealing a list of tariffs that could slap on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. Today President Trump says he's willing to put tariffs on all $500 billion of Chinese goods imported into the U.S. So China has over 505 billion goods imported into the U.S. All right, so it goes to show you how dependent we are of China, how much goods are being sold here in the U.S. from China. You know, as we see every time we look on the back of an object, it says made in China. All right, it says China can retaliate beyond instituting tariffs on U.S. goods. China holds $1 trillion worth of U.S. Treasury bonds. If it stops buying new bonds or sells off its holdings, it would trigger a hike in yields, putting pressure on America's debt load. All right. It says devaluing the yuan by 8% could make tariffs most moot. All right. The Chinese government could make it harder for the U.S. companies to operate in China. And as we can see, man, we got a lot of companies going over to overseas, man. All right. To China, man. Reading on, says last week the U.S. fired the latest shot in its trade war with China, revealing at least of tariffs that could slap on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. All right, and it says it has over 500 billion right here. 500 billion of Chinese goods imported. So right here is gonna import. It's like put tariffs on almost half. You know. It says while China has to this point been matching U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar, both countries instituted tariffs on 34 billion of items in June. If the U.S. forges ahead, China will have to use a different and more damaging set of weapons. In theory, the U.S. could place tariffs on 505 billion. Reason why they can go neck for neck, all right, and reason why China will have to use a different weapon is because China doesn't buy too much of U.S. goods, because nothing is made here. Okay, so China can only go as far as the goods that's sold. So if only 105 billion goods are sold to China from the U.S., that's as far as they can go. But 500 million goods are sold from China to the U.S., so they can put tariffs on the whole 500 billion worth of goods sold from China. All right, but China can only go as far as like 105 billion. All right. So that's why China will have to use another weapon. But as you can see, so far they've been going tick for tack, so to say. It says that could slap 200 billion worth of Chinese goods, while China has to this point been matching. Okay, so they've been matching, but eventually they're gonna run out, man, because not that much stuff is sold to China from the U.S. All right. It says, in theory, the U.S. could place tariffs on 505 billion worth of Chinese items, which is the total dollar value of goods imported from China to the U.S. All right, in 2017. President Trump already said he's willing to put tariffs on all these goods should the need arise on Friday. China only imports 130. See right here, only 130 billion. All right, so you subtract that from 505 billion, it's not even comparable. So China will have to use another method. All right, it says 130 billion worth of U.S. goods, so there's no way it can match President Trump's latest tariff threat. So look, okay, his latest, like they said, there's no way he can match his latest. So the latest is 200 billion. All right, only 130 billion worth of U.S. goods is being sold to China. So what? That's already surpassing. China can't go dollar for dollar no more, because they already surpassed them. Because not that much stuff is imported from the U.S. to China. So America can keep charging China up to 505 billion on goods, and China can only go as high as 130 billion, because that's how much is sold sold to China from the U.S. So it's just like it says, there's no way it can match President Trump's latest tariff threat. That doesn't mean it can't retaliate. So, okay, China has to go outside of just putting tariffs on the goods. It says, though, in fact, when it comes to non-tariff measures, it can do much more to hurt America than vice versa. Right, so yeah, it can do much more. All right, so let's look at some of these weapons it can use. China has a much larger arsenal of weapons than U.S. And we're going to go. It said, stop buying U.S. treasuries. China is one of the largest holders of U.S. treasuries, owning about $1 trillion of bonds in 2017, according to the Federal Reserve. Like most investors, it wants to stash greenbacks in something safe, and U.S. bonds are still solid investments. They're still solid investments because what? Currently, the U.S. dollar is still the world reserve currency. All right, so it still has its strength. You know, even though it's being devalued day by day, it still has strength. All right. It says, however, if the Chinese government gets pushed too far, it could decide to sell off holdings or stop buying new U.S. bonds that could have a significant impact on U.S. economy. It's a nuclear option. All right. Let me see something real quick. It says that would be the nuclear option, meaning China can just start selling off U.S. treasuries. All right. And reason how that would be the nuclear option, when you set off a nuclear bomb, all right, what they say, mutual assured destruction, meaning both sides going to take mass casualties. All right, so it's going to be a lose-lose on both sides. So that would be the nuclear optional. That's why if they sell off treasuries, it would be a nuclear arsenal, because they still have U.S. bonds. They invested in U.S. bonds, so they would lose. They will lose out on that money. So they both would lose. It will hurt America, but it will hurt China as well. You know what I mean? It says if China floods the market with U.S. treasuries, bond yields could climb. That's problematic. All right, so that's that weapon they can use, and they can devalue the yuan. If China really wants to annoy President Trump and make tariffs moot, it could devalue the yuan. In fact, this might be the best tool it has to get back at the U.S. currency. It's the most effective lever to offset the import of tariffs. All right, it says if the yuan falls by 8%, which has done since mid-March, $1 US now equals 6.77 yuans. U.S. importers will only see 2% rise in the cost of Chinese goods. Why? Because if the cost to buy Chinese items fall, then any tariffs added on the price tag will bring the total value of that item where it is today. Companies won't feel much of a difference. So they just make the value more equal. So China, the tariffs will be put on Chinese goods, but if they devalue their currency, they won't see much of a loss. You know? It says, next tool they can have is make life harder for U.S. companies. The Chinese government has a lot of sway over its people if it wants its citizens to stop traveling to the U.S. or quit buying American goods. So that's one way they can hurt America. It can make that happen, says Gerardo Zamorano, Director in Brands Investment Partners, Investments Groups. When South Korea agreed to host a missile defense system, Korean car companies lost market share on China. All right, so when South Korea agreed to host a missile defense system, all right, Korean companies lost market share in China in 2016 when people in Hong Kong began protesting for more independence from China, tourism to the country. So China has influence on its people. That's one way they can they can hurt the U.S. by telling them don't buy U.S. goods. All right, and Chinese have the largest population, one of the largest populations in the world. So that will really hurt America. All right. It says the Chinese government didn't introduce any new rules banning people from buying cars or visiting Hong Kong, but Chinese citizens stopped supporting these countries anyway. So China's really for their people. They stick together. Even though they didn't get the order to stop buying Korean cars, they still stopped doing it because they support it. They support their own country. All right. So China has influence on this country. It says you can see that right now today. What? Chinese people don't hire black people to work in their shops. You know, they don't even hire Japanese people. Chinese people don't even like Japanese people. They only like Chinese people. You know what I mean? Moab don't like them. And so Chinese people really stick together. So that's one way they can hurt it. It says there's no prohibition in place, but the Chinese government says wink, wink, and then tells the state media to make certain comments. And all of a sudden, businesses are losing market share. That could happen to McDonald's or Burger King, symbols of the U.S. Because we know there's McDonald's in China. There's Burger King in China. So what? All the Chinese people would just stop going to Burger King, and then what? The U.S. companies will start losing business over there. McDonald's will start shutting down over there in China. Burger Kings will start shutting down over in China because the Chinese people won't shop at those U.S. companies, man. All right. It says it could make it harder for U.S. companies to cash out of China. Wow, that's beautiful. All right, next one, we got enough on that weapon it could use. Make life harder for U.S. companies. It can isolate the U.S. China can play the waiting game. President Xi Jinping plans to stay in power indefinitely, which means he can take his time forging trade partnership with other countries around the world and isolate the U.S. We're already seeing China court Europe, while Canada and China have already trade talks. So China can just start trading with U.S. allies, man. Can isolate the U.S. You know, so China has lots of weapons, man. If China really wants to make a splash, it could join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which the U.S. abandoned when Trump took office, and then have more option trade with 11 countries. Hey, so the countries Trump banned it, saying, you know, remember Trump said, oh, we don't need the EU, and he backed out of certain trades. China say we can just join the people you abandoned and isolate you, man. So though it's not looking good for America, man, but this is a beautiful article, man. You know, you brothers want to look it up. 4 powerful weapons China has in its arsenal to win a U.S. trade war. All right, so I'm gonna get a precept and I'm gonna close out here. It says, this Ecclesiastes 12:3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. The grinding means the work, so it's gonna be not much work. All right, so it's gonna cease, meaning stop. It's not going to be any work. And those that look out the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of grinding is low. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and the daughters of music shall be brought low. The point in that was the sound of grinding is low, because if those U.S. companies suffer, which they're suffering now, all right, there's not going to be no work for anybody, man. All right, China's going to ultimately win this trade war because it has other weapons, more weapons in its arsenal than America does when it comes to this trade war. Well, with that, Lord willing, you edified. I'm going to give all praise to Yahweh Shemi Al-Shai. Double honor to the apostles of the great millstone. And salutations to all you sincere laborers out there pushing this truth in all sincerity and faith and honesty.